Hey there, heathens! I'm John, the Godless Engineer.
Hi, I'm Aaron Rod.
Hi, this is Andrew Jasko.
This is Don Queen from the Godless Heathens podcast.
Hello, I'm Dr. Hector Garcia.
Hi, this is Owen from Rex and Owen and the Skeptical Texan.
Hey, I'm Stephen Woodford of Rationality Rose.
Hi, I'm Thomas Westbrook of Holy Kool-Aid.
Hi, this is Matt Dillahunty.
Hi, this is Brent and Nikki from Unapologetix.
Hi, I'm Donald Trump, and I took a rip. Wait, one second. I gotta put my hands up here.
Just go ahead, Robert. Just go. Hi, I'm Robert Stanley of the Right to Reason podcast, and I
took a left at the valley.
And we... Oh, should I say it too? No, sorry.
Sure.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Hey guys, it's Kevin here, flying solo tonight. I just thought I'd give you guys a bit of a heads up. This is going to be a bonus show, and we're going to be talking to Robert Stanley of the Right to Reason podcast, Brent and Nikki of Unapologetix, and Matthew of the Odd Atheist Friends. So hopefully this is going to be the first of a series that we're going to do just so you guys can get behind the scenes and see what goes on in our mind, and our perverted minds, most of all. So this is the first of Atheist Talks. So let's go straight in, and just beware, it starts right off the bat with big black cock jokes. Enjoy.
Praise it if you're curious about evolution. Science explains it.
That's the thing, it still stigmatizes people, because I listened to another podcast where a black guy did write in because he loves dating black women, but he always feels like he's disappointing them. So now he's dating white women. So yes, it's like an oxymoron. It's still bad.
It's bad for like at least half of black men.
Now, if I might interject my unprofessional opinion,
high of a percentage.
I do happen to have a couple of people that I know that happen to be ex-workers in the industry, and apparently there is a lot of pressure for black guys to be super well endowed, to the point that there is a lot of surgeries done for guys that are
silver tongue.
Yeah, apparently there's a lot of surgeries done for people that are just normally endowed to become extra large, and it's a whole pressure that the black male actually has to live up to that stereotype.
Yeah, well, I'm Irish, and I've always said I'm hung like a Tic Tac, half-eaten Tic Tac with a fur coat.
Yes, own that. Yes,
own it.
Pics or it didn't happen.
I don't think our mics. Is there a mic?
No.
Nancy in here. Wait,
what does Nancy want to say? I want to hear from Nancy.
It's not on.
Whose mic do you have?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's off.
The one I normally
Nancy is taking a nap.
No, I'm just not to be on.
Robert, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, great!
Our mic is on.
Yeah, you're looking mighty dapper this afternoon, by the way.
Thanks. I am intoxicated, hence the racist questions.
Anyway, I think you're kind of in the sweeping generalization category, because one Jewish person may just brush it off, another one may feel offended, and the third one may say, you're not worth the effort to respond. So I don't think you can make a statement that covers everybody in a certain category.
And she feels the same way when she strokes a Magnum 44. Right?
Exactly.
I think that's in the same way, like what Nikki said, where no, it's positive for some, but there are those that are average or less than average in that regard, and the racism has a negative effect on them.
Yeah.
And in the same way, like if you're a Jewish person that's low income, that might be a positive way that people view Jews, but it's still racism, and it still has a negative effect on a certain demographic that doesn't necessarily meet that expectation that is altogether a stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say, too, that, like, I feel like the whole idea of Jews being good with money is a central part of anti-Semitism. Like, it doesn't, it's a part of that. And I also feel like it's about a history thing. Like, for example, part of the reason why black men have, on average, larger penises is because, especially in America and most of the countries that we were literally bred to be the biggest that we could possibly be. Like, the smaller slaves were pretty much killed. The smaller babies were killed. Like, we were bred to be. possible.
Can I push back on that? Is that enough time to make a...
Wait. And let me just get this out before I forget it, because I'm going to fucking forget it. I have a terrible brain. And then it's like, as far as like Jewish people having money, like if we look at the history of like why that is, of why like being so like financially set is important, because there's fucking pogroms and like you had to be able to get up and leave at any fucking time because all of a sudden your government is turning against you. And I feel like the history of that and like why these things exist and why they become quote unquote like positive stereotypes is something we have to examine. Like it's deeper than just, oh, it's good or bad. There's like a lot going on there. That's all.
There's also the thing about one of the reasons why the thing about Jews being good with money started is that a lot of times during like the late Roman era and like right after the fall of Rome fell for like Europe and that kind of stuff, is that the Jews were the only people who really did money, because early Christianity, there was this anti-money thing. So they let the Jews handle the money. And so that's how it's like the stereotypical about the reason why Irish people are considered to be drunks is because they did a lot of business in bars. It's kind of the same way how that stereotype kind of
economics. It's all economics.
It's all economics. So the Irish guys are doing business in bars, and at the time of the early Christian church, 700 AD, is that Christians weren't really told to do that lending money much in a way that Muslims don't deal with that today. There's workarounds around it, but it's kind of the same thing. So that might be part of where some of that started.
I love that with the topic of racism, Brent and Kevin both just went silent. Matthew and I
got my mouth full. Come on.
We'll look into this. What happened? Why are you hitting me?
Because I like to open up my mouth and shoot vigorously to my knee and see what fucking happens.
Brent and Kevin are intelligent. They're the smartest people in the room.
I mean, what do y'all think that in atheism we should be doing more conversations about race?
Yes.
That's one of the hardest things for me in the community is like, I feel like that's a huge blind spot. I think a lot of things are blind spots, but that to me seems to be one of them. In that, there's just
it's difficult.
Very little discussion.
Okay, let's start with that then. Let's start with that.
It was helpful to the black community in America when things were happening.
But it's not just black people. It's like every race, like is basically.
Okay, so let's talk to chat with that. So I want to thank you guys all for coming, and please give a 2 minutes introduction each one of you. And I thank you so much for coming to this forum. We'll discuss the social economic repercussions of the famine in Uganda, and after that we'll start discussing. So please, if you'd be so kind, introduce yourself.
Starting with.
I don't know, one of them.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I am the co-host of the Odd Atheist Friends. I'm from Chicago, and so I don't know what else.
And you neutral evil. Perfect.
Yes. We just don't care where the experience comes from.
And I'm Nikki.
And I'm Brentley.
And we're from the Unapologetix podcast. We are an atheist, humanist podcast with a little bit of nerd shit in there, too.
Yeah.
And we're an interracial couple.
Yeah.
I'm the black one.
We need to say that, it's spelled with an X, so I just want to...
Yes, Unapologetix with an X at the end, because if you use a C, you're going to get a white supremacist podcast. Don't do that.
Yikes!
Yeah, I know. Somebody's going to have to change that somewhere.
Jesus. Yeah, thanks for that setup. I'll follow up with that as the white guy. For the record, I feel like you both of your intros, you kind of sold yourselves short. Odd Atheist Friends, a veteran and a transgender person, both talking about current common issues. It's a really great show. And the wife and I were just listening to it just this morning.
Thank you.
And, it's fantastic and it's hilarious. It's the free throw. It's not about basketball at all. It's a free flow kind of podcast, which I really appreciate those because I feel like they get into topics a little more detailed than the ones that actually detail that topic, if that makes sense. But and then also Unapologetix, it's not just like the way you guys frame it. This is just an opinion from a fellow podcaster, okay? A positive critique, as it were. But I feel like you guys frame it like we are really addressing social justice issues. One of us, is black. One of us comes from fundamentalism in like a weird hippie fundamentalist way. But either way, but this is what. But really, what I love about your show is that you are the most cute. Like, you're the cutest goddamn couple I've ever.
Yes, that's so true.
It's fantastic. I love it. And the latest episode that Grigori and I just released this morning, we were actually, and this is like, I'm not sucking your dick, or only one of you have a dick. But anyway, still. We tried to frame it based on your style because we were like, oh my God, I love that. Like that is so cute. So our intro was kind of like she and I just kind of goofing off, and talking and laughing together. And I love the format. I really do. But anyway, okay. That was my spiel.
Thank you, Robert.
Oh, all right. Right to Reason podcast. We mostly do like philosophy, politics, and it's a lot of debates. Lots of debates. If that's not your bag, I understand. But
Robert, you do that way better than I could. Some of the people that you've had on, after like 10 minutes, I would have been calling this guy all kinds of words and names in the book and fucking hung up
But
on
I
him.
get high first. That's the difference. When I talk to these fundamentalists, I'm stoned as a motherfucker. Yeah. It's like I don't hear half the shit they say. Just the last comment they make, and they're like, "And that's why I believe in Noah's Ark." And I'm like, speaking of Noah's Ark, but they spoke for like 10 minutes. I'm baked
because Robert is baked out of his fucking mind.
Well, they've been getting high praise from everybody, but I've noticed nobody's praising us, obviously. So okay, that's fine now. That's not a problem.
Speaking of baked and LATV. That episode that you guys did where you got high was hilarious.
Oh yeah,
it was so funny.
Yeah, we're still recovering.
Oh my God, that shit was funny.
On that episode.
No, I totally enjoy all your shows, and I listen to them on a regular basis myself. But anyway, talk about Uganda and the. Oh no.
What?
You were baked again, weren't you?
But I'm high enough that I'm like, oh shit, did I not do prep on Uganda? Fuck. How long have they been talking about that?
No, but Robert, speaking of, it's a shame your wife is not here because she's just a doll. She's just fantastic. You should have her on your show on a regular basis. She's just fun.
I would love to. She gets very shy. She gets shy so easily.
You should see Christine the first time
she's
she was
great
on
for
the show.
radio. She's giggly. She's fun. She's intelligent. I love it.
You should have seen her the first time on the show. She was like super shy, and now she can't shut up. And it was like,
Now I took over the show.
Yeah, like today she actually took over the show. So
what
not
happened?
Barely talk. It's just that he never lets you.
Oh no! I actually took over the show today.
No, she
I legitimately
hosted the show today.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome!
They actually shot me with tranquilizer darts and then took over the show.
Yeah, a new era has begun.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys about anything atheism. Just want to have a nice chit chat, no format, no discussion, no questions, but
Let the chaos begin.
Let the chaos begin. Exactly. Well, but what do you think atheism has done for us? Where is it going? Is it going anywhere? Etc. Etc. Any thoughts right out of the blue? I mean, Nikki, you started out with racism and atheism. I think that might be a good place to start.
Yeah, it splits right down the middle, really. And we were talking about this the other day. It's you got two different sides of atheism, and this is where we were like kind of like we could be happy with where it goes, but it could be just as bad. It splits right down the middle with the you got the freedom of speech advocates, like
Absolutists.
Absolutists. That was what you said.
Yes.
And then you're right. But it, like Arcad, what is it?
Arcad of Sargon.
No,
So
Sargon
I think,
of Akkad.
yeah, Sargon of Akkad.
I call him dickhead of fuckface. I refuse to call him anything else.
Or Benjamin.
That is what it is. So I think, and I'm not gonna take complete credit for this. I mean, obviously I've seen it, and that's part of the reason why I hadn't identified as atheist for so long. But I read a great article, and of course I can't think of the author's name right now. It was in a public policy journal, and he was talking about, the difference between the atheist rock stars and the movement atheism. So I would say, we are sort of like the movement atheism, right?
Yes.
Like we're trying to, advocate for atheism, identify the issues, really try to, bring more people in, and we care about social justice and humanist issues.
Yes.
And then there's the rock stars, the Sam Harrises, and who are mostly free speech absolutists, who are more, in my opinion, on the libertarian leaning.
Yes.
And so those two things, the free speech absolutism, the liberty or death, and the libertarianism comes together and creates this sort of this framework that's just kind of racist. It just ends up being.
It is. Because it's like everybody should be okay with taking care of.
Go ahead. Argue with me.
By the way, I'm sorry. Just for a second, I was clapping at the Cubs game. It had nothing to do with talking about it. So the game is now tied going into the 6th inning. So
let me start by saying, Nikki, I've debated a lot of people, but you are not someone I would ever wish to debate. I would
pay to watch that.
Patreon goal. Robert versus Nikki, 1-on-1.
Let me push back. I'm getting an anti-free speech vibe. Like you're characterizing it as free speech being characterized with racism, and I don't see the parallel or the link. It certainly can be used and is often used by a lot of racist people, so that they have the ability to put their voice out there, their horrible agenda, their angry and hateful speech. But being anti-free speech, if that's fair to say, if you're not pro-free speech, then you must be the other, at the risk of characterizing you in just one or the other, black or white. But that's crazy to me. Free speech is one of the most important things that we have as citizens.
I completely agree. So let me, because I think I may have mischaracterized this. I am not.
Or I could have misunderstood.
Yeah. I am not anti-free speech in any way, shape, or form.
But the people. I'm sorry. No, you go. You were talking, and I cut it.
But I am against free speech absolutism, which is this idea that we as people, as a society, can't come together and say, okay, in the marketplace of ideas, there are some that are just untenable. And yes, free speech is amazing. We need to keep it. But there are some ideas that we can just stop now. Like, for example, stating about the humanity of other people. Like, I would like to stop doing that now. It's a waste of time debating about whether or not we should be all living as Christians or Muslims or whatever. Again, would like to stop debating that. Whether or not being LGBTQ is a natural occurring thing or if it's something you choose. I would like to stop debating that. Like, there's this idea, there's a litany of things that basically serve to dehumanize, to take away the agency of, and to just ignore and erase groups of people. And it just so happens that the rockstar atheist seems to always be on the side of the people who want the ability to dehumanize and just erase people. Like, it's not an accident that Sam Harris had Charles Murray on his show. It's not an accident that Sam Harris constantly talks about the evils of Muslim people while not acknowledging the very same way that Christian people are doing that as well. Like, that's the problem that I have, is that the free speech absolutism goes into this territory of, I must support all speech. And no, you don't actually. We as a society can figure it out. There is no slippery slope. There's a defined list, and I know we can figure that out together. I know it.
So sorry, Matthew.
Go ahead.
As a species, we've already accepted some of the limits of free speech. For example, the classic example, you can't yell fire in a crowded area or something like that. So we already defined some of the limits of what free speech is. And without going to the fact that between our two countries, free speech laws are also different, who determines the limit as to when we determine that, okay, we're done with the subject, we're done, as Nikki's suggesting? Who would determine that?
Can I finish
of course.
a thought that I was thinking about before that? Nikki, I want to expand upon what you said, especially about the rock star atheists that are out there. See, these guys were great 20 years ago, getting atheism out there to be more showing. I like that and absolutely useful. However, these guys are all 60, 70, 80, that kind of stuff. And so 20 years ago, we needed what they said, But now things have progressed a little bit on that. So now it's not only just atheism, but it's like humanism too. And I also like to say transhumanism too, because I feel that a lot of our problems are engineering faults that can be fixed that way. Anyways, that's a side point. But
I must know about this. You have to tell us later because that sounds amazing.
Okay, I'll go into that in a second, but please let me finish my thought before it runs away, which is entirely possible. So these guys who did that, but they're older guys, and older guys tend to be more conservative. So that's how come they're leaning more libertarian and have the guy who identified that trans people want to be an attack helicopter. Fuck that guy with a cactus. So the younger guys, I say guys, I'm using that as a all in all speech, but it's more than just this, and free speech only goes so far, as far as like you can only say, fire in a crowded theater, or it comes to the point when you start dehumanizing other people, those arguments are over. They just are. We just no longer have to talk about it, and I don't want to have a discussion with fucking Nazis and fascists. I just don't want to fucking do it. So this is where arguing for, like, for instance, like my co-host Eric for the Odd Atheist Friends is a trans man, and so arguing LGBT rights is a human right and all that kind of stuff. So that's where I want to say. So as far as that goes,
where the hell is he anyway? Should be here.
I think he went to go work out. I'm not 100% sure, but so I'm supporting and
I'm gonna kick his ass when I see him.
Yeah, go ahead. But he's working out. He'll probably kick the dog shit out of you too.
I don't know. So, we both work out.
But transhumanism is not only humanism, but it's that our failings as humans, as far as like our ability, our bodies breaking down, is an engineering thing where we're now doing stuff like I'm learning now about CNC machining and robotic machining and that kind of stuff. And so they're doing stuff with like they're in CNC, they're making hip joints and that kind of stuff, and they're 3D printing things that go into the human body now. That's what transhumanism is basically a part of, is that putting our brain into a computer will, I think, eventually happen. Do you know what I'm saying?
So Ben Franklin was the first one to do this when it came to the glasses. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's actually part of transhumanism, is using engineering and science to overcome physical liabilities and disabilities.
Aha!
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I repeat Kevin's question back? I would be curious as to Nikki, Brent's, and Matthew's answer as to what is the mechanism. And forgive me if I don't say this the same way that you were asking, Kev, but I really want to know what you guys think. What is the mechanism that you believe we should use to be able to justify what speech we limit, and who gets to make those decisions?
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, something akin to the United Nations body. We come together as a global race and put some shit on paper.
So a democratic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
System.
And just certain things. Like, we're not going to take away all the free speech. And I feel like, it's not. I feel like the slippery slope fallacy is just like just is all over this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because it's like this idea that if we start limiting speech, that it's going to go like out the everything's going to go crazy, and then the Christians are going to control, and then the fucking atheists aren't going to be able to say anything.
Yeah,
but I
really think that exactly. I have more faith in humanity than that. Yeah. I'm just not that cynical.
Maybe it's misplaced faith. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying,
I think the line grows. I think the line needs to be drawn at denigrating other people. You can have free speech all you want, but if you start saying racist and slogans and sayings like God, any number of things like like some of the slogans that were chanted in Charlottesville. Some of those slogans
the Jews will not replace us, or
exactly
some kind of trope from the civil rights era, for example.
Those are racist speeches that I don't think need to be protected, because I think that they're just, man, how can I say that?
But you want the state to limit those kinds of phrases, though?
I don't think that they need to be limited. I think that we as a society need to say, look, these things are racist, and it's beyond debate anymore.
You want social justice to limit them, not the state.
No, personally, I don't think there's something wrong with the state doing that, because this is exactly what we're experiencing right here in Canada. There are limits on hate speech right here in Canada. For example, when the Westboro Baptist Church tried to come into the country to picket something, as they always did, the government stopped them at the border, says, no, you guys are inciting violence, you're inciting hate, you're not welcome into the country. There's nothing bad. What we have to question is, what tool do we use to determine that line? And of course, I think the vague answer to that is obviously science. It's between the choice of what makes a human something that they don't have a choice in, and something like race, for example, or skin color, or orientation, or something like that, and something that they do choose. I think maybe there's the vague limit as to where our speech can go.
And I also think that the social consequences to what is said is extremely important. Yes, you can spout all kinds of racist, bigoted things that you want, but if it gets back to your boss and you get fired, that's on you. There are consequences to your actions.
So, as atheists, on the topic of how we feel and what we think as atheists, we are a result of the Enlightenment. We are a result of philosophers that found ways, like David Hume, found ways to sneak their atheism into their text. Some of these guys literally wrote things, which I'm sure you all know. They wrote things so that they didn't release them. They didn't publish them until after they were dead, and that's when people got to find out about these things. So we have benefited from all of these people fighting through free speech back when we didn't have the power. The religious right had the power. The religious right of that time had the power, and they were limiting speech. Mm-hmm. And I find it a bit hypocritical for the atheist movement to now be saying, we want to limit speech. It's terrifying to me.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't there a very profound difference between limiting speech of an idea and limiting the idea that a human is less than a human? To me, we see the direct result. We see the direct result of hate speech hate ideas that turn into hate speech, that turn into hate groups, that turn into hate crimes. The idea is clear. It's A to B to C to D, and it's over. I think that we can figure out what that exact speech that leads to that is. That's a very different idea of atheism, which is a denial of something. Choosing to say, I do not believe in something. Choosing to take a stand on that. And not to say that there isn't violence against atheism, but it's on that's a whole nother ball game as far as the discrimination that is experienced as an atheist.
But we're forgetting that there are nonviolent racists. There are nonviolent right-wing people. There are nonviolent Christians in the same way there's nonviolent Jews. In the same way, I don't feel like it's an accurate portrayal of the thing that we all hate, by the way. We're all on the same team. Nikki, Brent, Matthew, Kev, we're all here together agreeing about these topics. But whenever we start saying, is it okay if we disagree? And you go, no. I say, whoa, hold on. And in the same way, like the Pol Pot, Stalin, right? Mao. These are atheist communist governments that don't represent atheism. We've heard these old, beat up strawman tropes so many times that we go, they weren't doing it because they were atheists, right? But they were violent people. They did have violent regimes. And I don't know that it's fair to characterize violence in speech as synonymous.
But I don't think that it's fair to say non-violent racist either. Like, racism is inherently violent.
It always leads.
You cannot see the statistics of how Black people around the globe live and think that there's a such thing as a non-violent racist.
No, but neither can you.
Isn't everyone a little racist? Isn't everyone fighting instrumental racism that exists within our society? Isn't everyone dealing with that? By your definition, that would mean that everyone's a violent person.
Not everyone, no. Lots of people are not dealing with it, which is the problem. That's how we have Donald Trump as our president.
I agree with you. We're on the same page on all these things, but when it comes to free speech, it does seem that we disagree a little. And this is not me defending one of the guys holding a tiki torch in Charlottesville necessarily. This is me defending the fact that what if somebody calls us the guy holding a tiki torch in Charlottesville? That could happen just as easily, and it did historically throughout our atheist history.
Well, hold on. I think we need to make a distinction here because you're both correct, and I agree with both of you. But the problem is we're maybe confounding freedom of speech with also freedom of thought. You have the right to free whatever you want, but as a society, do we need to impose some rule as to we have a social contract as a species that we live in a society, and whatever you do out there affects others, and we need to put in some ground rules because whatever you do does affect others around you. You can be racist in your mind all you want, but the line is when you step out there and you speak of it, this is where you cross the line. Maybe
you can also be racist from inaction as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, that's a whole new can of worms.
I'm just saying, but
or a lack of information, like what Nikki was referring to earlier, where Sam Harris would have the bell curve on his show, but he doesn't necessarily have conversations to the latter of that regard. So it's the idea of I'll present a certain amount of information that agrees with my agenda, but I'm not going to present information that disagrees with my agenda. I'm not necessarily saying that Sam Harris has a racist agenda per se, but he certainly has this is what's going to pop. I want to do that thing that pops. I think is his
Harris is, of course, trying to boost listens to his show and get more money.
Right.
Yeah, because how radical...
Which we could all be accused of in our own regard.
Think about this, how radical that having someone on his show that would be the latter of Charles Murray would just be someone who believes in the full humanity of Black people.
That's fair.
Well, that is fucking sane.
I make next to nothing on Patreon. I do this and talk about what I talk about because I feel about it. So if I made money, great, but we don't make a shit ton of money doing a show. We make next to nothing. So we do this because we like it.
Matthew, if it's any consolation, Matthew, we have one patron, so don't worry about it.
I think we do too. I think we've got one patron.
You know what?
Maybe two.
I got to put a pause here for half a second, Matthew, because I haven't heard either of you two speak in a while here.
Because I'm listening.
Yeah, that kind of worries me.
Well, I really don't have a lot to say on this issue.
Well, you gotta have something to say because right now, Nikki's the only female talking, and I don't want this to be like a sausage fest. Poor
okay.
Nikki.
Well, I will shoot my.
All right, just shoot your thing.
Oh yeah. It's a good thing.
We're gonna get bukkake.
Shoot your verbal load upon all of us.
So,
we are prepared. Our mouths are open.
I definitely don't think a government should have a lot of restrictions on what you can say. They definitely should on human rights. I definitely agree with Canadian free speech.
You prefer our version as
but
the American
I think society is so unbelievably lax on what they accept other people to say. And people get so upset when you call them out on it. My sister, she's 40 something, and she's super homophobic. And I called her out on it. And she got so offended because she's like, oh, I have coworkers that are gay and they don't think I'm homophobic. And I'm just like, you can have coworkers who are gay and still be homophobic.
Your point would be what?
I think
No, I'm talking about to your sister.
Oh,
it's like when you know,
exactly.
It's like saying to your sister is like, "Oh, I've got gay friends," and it's like your point would be what?
Well, no, it's not that she has gay friends. She has gay coworkers.
Not even friends.
Yeah, no, not even friends. But it's that people need to speak out against, like literally anyone who does. Like if someone says something that's racist, don't just like, oh, well, they're just racist sometimes. Because I have a brother-in-law.
You absolutely stand against it.
Exactly, and I have a brother-in-law who is racist, but his wife's like, no, he's just racist a little bit, and it's like, no, that's still racism. It's still bad. and then like you see it in like so many different things, and people don't realize necessarily that what they're doing may be racist or homophobic because people don't call them out on it. And so those little chips away lead to the like KKK resurfacing.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of funny. I started a job like right after I retired from the Navy. I got a job working as a forklift mechanic. And so it was a great job. It was a great company. I was in a union, but like the first day there, I was talking with one guy and he said something about I forgot exactly what his phrase, but he said the Jappers. Oh. And I'm like, my wife is Japanese. Like, I met and married her when I was in Japan. She's from Niigata. And so it was like, I looked at him like, dude, my wife is Japanese. He looked at me and was like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, my wife is Japanese.
I love Japanese women.
I love one too, and we've been married for almost 10 years.
Nancy, you've been around for like
Great timing, man.
I know. Nancy, you've been around for like 5,000 years, so what are your thoughts on this?
Jesus.
Now that the old lady finally gets a chance. Unfortunately, we're talking about things that are on a spectrum in many cases, because if you live in a democracy and you have a constitution, then the so-called free speech rights are pretty well laid out as best as they can. Although some things will always be intuitive and some things will be prohibitive, and they'll have to be fought out in the courts. The interesting thing is that free speech means, of course, that someone can say something offensive to you and you can feel insulted. And they have free speech, and you can confront it or non-confront it any way that you want to. But they're entitled to do that as long as they don't incite violence in some way, or as long as they don't take a violent action against you. However, if you think it's slanderous or libelous, being in a democracy, you can take them to court. And there are several cases that I have no idea about, and I can't use them as examples, but I know a lot of free speech cases come down to context. You know, what was said, why it was said, who said it, and so forth. Colleges, universities are struggling now with what does it mean to have free speech on campus? And there are a lot of campuses that refuse to have people like Jordan
Peterson.
They refuse to have him on campus because they think that he will, or the students feel that it's disrespectful to the student body, that he might incite a riot. So in thinking about what might happen...
He also might lower the IQ of the whole college by 20
Exactly.
points.
Yeah, exactly. So then the college or the university has a decision to make. Are they going to backtrack on their invitation? Are they not going to invite him to begin with? And are they then tamping down his right to free speech? It may be onerous, but is it more than free speech? Is a college campus the place to debate these things, even though, you know, they're horrible and they're disrespectful and they may be racist? Where is that? Where is the free speech button, you know, where you say, okay, now I got to turn it off because it goes someplace else? And I don't think in our democracies on both sides of the border that we fully defined it. And so conversations like this are really valuable because they bring out what context, who is saying it, why are they saying it, historically, what was going on before those words were said.
So is it possible that all these problems stem from the fact that we're trying to make one size fit for all, while we're a wide variety of different people, from generation to gender to orientation, you know.
I think what we're trying to do is establish some kind of equality and right to have, ability to have the rights to speak freely and know that I can speak freely. It's like, you know, my right to put my arm out ends where your nose be, or my the right to put my fist ends,
right.
You know, where your nose
swinging your
begins.
arm ends where my nose begins.
Exactly.
Right.
So we're having a nuanced conversation about something that allows us to be able to look at all aspects of this, and if we come to some conclusions, that's great. If not, it's just free speech.
This is where the generalities come into play. I mean, you try to do what's best for society in general, and there are always going to be outliers and that kind of stuff. So, but it's one of these things where it's like, if you make things generally acceptable for most people, as far as like, don't be a bigot, then the only people who are really affected are the bigots anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I thought Nikki made a great point in saying that these people, and once again, forgive me if I mischaracterize it, but you're saying there are people that are being negatively affected by speech, and in that way, speech, maybe it's not synonymous with violence, but it certainly is related to violence. It can lead to it. But let me throw this out. Okay, here's an analogy, argument from analogy fallacy, going into it already accepting the fault of my argument. But so if we say we're on an island, right? All of us, everybody that's having this conversation right now, we all somehow end up on an island like Lost or Lord of the Flies or something like that, right? I have the conch, I'm talking. But so, you remember that one. So we all decide that the island can easily be divided between the north and the south side, right? It's kind of a long, oblong kind of shape island. There's north and south. I come out, I'm a jackass. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't know anything about hunting. I've never been out looking for food, but I just have a lot to say. And I go, the north side is where we're going to hunt, right? Mm-hmm. But let's say that Nancy is fully aware of where the animals are on the island, how we're going to survive. She's been through stuff. She knows how this goes, and she knows the south side is better. Nancy's job as part of our democracy on the island, the group of us, whenever we make decisions, is she gets to count the votes. So she counts all the votes, and she finds out everybody agrees with me, even though I'm a fucking idiot. But she decides to say everybody disagreed with me. Now, she has violated a central premise, a construct, not just a character flaw, but something that violates the core concept of our group. Democracy, integrity, honesty. Because she knows it would be for the better good. And it's very utilitarian. It's very John Stuart Mill-ish, per se. But we got a problem here, because then that's going to happen again and again and again. And eventually the whole group ends up failing, because without this kind of integrity, without democracy, without the idea that we all need to have the right to have our own contribution to the decisions of the group, even if our speech is something we disagree with, even if it's vile. And I'm not talking about the stuff like what Nikki was saying. I totally support Nikki's point of saying some speech is totally outrageous. Even Kevin commented to that, fire in a theater. 100%, guys, 100%. But if we're saying, I don't like that, and you shouldn't get to say it, is that not kind of like Nancy lying about the results? And does that not lead, while it might have a temperate benefit, because Nancy knows where to hunt, and we all get to eat that night. Thank God. We got fat bellies, we're greased up, and we're happy, and we sleep well. But tomorrow's another day, and there are certain things that we have discovered since the Enlightenment, since atheism, by the way, that we value.
No, that's a good point.
I think it's an apt analogy, but I think when we put it in real terms, what you're arguing for is a future in which we continuously allow argument over the humanity of women, people of color, and people that are LGBTQ. That's what you're saying. You're saying that, it's scary to think of a world in which we put limits on speech like this. So instead of doing that, let's just let people continue to terrorize those that do not fit the mold, which is getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter around our necks. Let's just keep that system in place, because I just don't trust people enough to make decisions about my speech. And I say that that's a privilege. Being able to say that is a privilege. And it should be recognized. It must be recognized as such. And that has to weigh on the decision. It has to.
Would we be making that same kind of argument today if we didn't have what I call a recent phenomenon, really, of the trollers, the people that are the shitlords, the people that are going out there and try to stir trouble? There was a time where I guess it was replaced by simply civility. You could disagree with somebody, but you wouldn't go out of your way to make him or her mad. Is this loss of civility in today's more interconnected world maybe behind all these issues that we're having?
I think that there's a thing of people hiding behind their computers and just saying shit to just try to piss people off.
Yeah, that's a very recent phenomenon, right? There's no way in hell that used to happen 50 years ago.
No, of course not. It's the same thing with like people hiding behind the glass of their car windows. Do you know what I'm saying? It's the same thing writ large, except on the internet, you are most likely never going to see the person face to face.
Yeah.
So they can say whatever the fuck they want on the computer and say all kinds of mean, stupid ass shit because they know that there's never going to be any repercussions for what they said.
Exactly.
So, it's like I've actually had people in the past, like there was one time somebody sent me a death threat with a Google map direction of where he said he would hide my body. And yes, I reported his ass to the police.
Oh my God. There we go. Okay. So if you can say that you're going to kill somebody and you know what I mean? Like,
that's kind of insane. I don't know.
We already do fucking limit speech. Like, that's why I don't understand.
Right.
You fucking threatened
somebody. Because I reported his ass to the fucking FBI because he made a death threat over state lines.
Nice one.
Yes.
Brent, let me throw this out. And I totally agree with you. We already do limit speech, and we also already do have borders, right? But where you draw that border from where it already exists has implications. So if we say, let's go back to the original Teddy Roosevelt days and start drawing our borders right out into the ocean and start encompassing places like, as he tried Cuba or Dominican Republic, but he got Hawaii, he got some stuff. As you start expanding that border, you say, hey, we already got borders. What's wrong with moving that border a little bit? And I feel like that's the same with free speech. We already have free speech, but it is a slippery slope, my friend, if we start saying, let's expand this idea of free speech.
Israel-Palestine when it comes to shifting borders.
Perfect example. Gaza Strip. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
It's terrifying. But at no point during this conversation do I think that we need to look at one another and go, you're my enemy because of your speech.
No.
Or you're my friend because you said the same thing I did. No, that person's not your friend, and that other person's not your enemy. Speech is just the way that how would we know that speech is wrong if it's not said? If I say something completely false right now, and then Kevin corrects me, and I go, okay, Kevin, what do you know? Okay, what, you host Left at the Valley? Whatever.
Hey,
and then Nancy corrects me, and I go,
here.
Nancy, what do you know? And she's like, I've been around the block, Jack. I know some things. And I go, okay. And then Brent corrects me. I'm like, Brent, what do you know? And like, Brent goes, actually, I have a personal experience with that thing that you said, and that's completely false, Robert. And eventually, all of you start criticizing me, whether politely or not. The fact that I had the free speech to say this on Left at the Valley is the only reason that I ever get a chance to change my mind. Give me a fucking chance.
But there's also the fallacy of populism too. I'm wrong because everybody else is right. We would all. I would still be a fucking Christian if I didn't, if I didn't think for myself at some point. I would still be a fundamentalist Christian asshole. Now I'm just an asshole.
I think one thing that illustrates is that we do have to call people out on their homophobia, their racism, their horrible beliefs, and show them why they're wrong. Because you don't say with someone who's homophobic, you call them out on it, and then you might have a chance to educate them on why that's bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like people misunderstand what so many groups are asking for. When it comes to what I expect, I'm not asking people to just not see color. I'm asking people to be anti-racist. That is a thing. Be anti-racist. When same thing for queer communities. I'm asking you to be anti-homophobic. You need to be out there calling people out. And it would be amazing if people just recognize that, how revolutionary just that could be. It would be absolutely revolutionary.
I belong to a bunch of military groups on Facebook, right? And some of them, they call themselves salty or rude or whatever, right? And so you see, especially with a lot of these older guys, and they'll say something like, with trans people, they'll call them transsexuals or all kinds of other rude terms. Yeah. And what I do is I post a picture. It's for one, it says something to the effect of, that's not what they're called. It's something like this. Why do you care? Shut the fuck up. And
or transvestite. That one's
transvestite.
Particularly critical of a certain person. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I literally just post this meme and I don't see anything else because at this point I don't try to argue with anybody. I don't try to get past their cognitive dissonance because my voice isn't going to do it. Now, I've said that it took me many years to get past my own cognitive dissonance, and it was because it wasn't one individual time. It was a bunch of people over the period of years who said little things over the period of time. And I'm hoping that at some point that my don't be an asshole picture on this Facebook group influences somebody.
Yeah. You always need to put it for the audience. You're never going to convince the person you're talking to, and you really shouldn't waste your time trying to do so. Post it out there for the person that comes behind and reads the thread or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of, I just recently watched Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
Yes.
I remember that from my childhood. And I was I used to love that movie. And then I watched it again. I'm like, holy shit!
Yes,
that's it. They find out. They kissed the woman that was actually a man, and they're vomiting and what the.
Trans.
You don't remember when we interviewed Alexa McCool, Marissa McCool?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, she talked exactly about that exact scene.
Never saw that movie.
Yeah. Oh, you never saw the movie? Okay.
No. I'm too young.
Where have you been all your life?
I wasn't born yet.
You don't remember that movie?
I am 23.
Hey,
I'm a baby.
As a 23-year-old, you have never seen Ace Ventura.
No. She was raised in a cult.
I normally would critique I would normally be like, what are you actually?
I was raised on Die Hard.
It is a shit, horribly biased movie.
Ever Christmas movie.
No,
it is.
Yes, it is.
It's a Christmas movie.
It's a Christmas movie.
Number one.
What, Die Hard?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Die Hard 1 and 2.
Yeah, 1 and 2 are Christmas
2 are
movies.
both Christmas movies.
Getting back to the conversation, of course.
Hey, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
No, it's the best movie ever that happens to be Christmas. It's not
okay, Brent.
Jesus Christ.
We just wanted to
Brent Lee.
Somebody muzzle Brent. Somebody muzzle Brent. Hold him down.
I didn't think we were talking
Down, boy. Down.
I just want to ask a quick question because I know that at least 2 of us on this call are in multiracial marriages or relationships. Mm-hmm. Is anybody else?
No.
I am.
No, I'm afraid not. Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So 3 of us.
I'm just 2 white girls.
I like some blackberry. What?
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, because I find that interesting and telling.
I mean, all vaginas are pink on the inside, anyway.
They are. They absolutely
they're
are.
More, in my opinion, and this is no disrespect to the two white ladies in the audience. I'm sure you are beautiful downstairs, but I just feel like a little bit of dark before you get into the pink. I think that's beautiful. I love it. It adds a certain dexterity.
The comments of Robert Stanley are not necessarily those of Letta Valley, subsidiaries, etc.,
more
etc.
about vaginas than free speech. I would literally give up my free speech just to have the right.
Well, that was a great show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Free speech. It's full circle.
Okay.
Never mind. Nikki's gonna punch me.
The reason why I asked this question is because we're talking about free speech and atheism and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I find interesting is that I know that I broke away from my societal norm, and my first wife was a white Catholic.
Oh.
And so...
That's pretty racist.
Her father was extremely racist.
Bigot.
And so...
I do that now when I go to Subway and they ask for white cheese. I say, isn't that racist?
But I'm just saying, though, and I just think that it goes to some of the mental dexterity that we end up having as atheists. That three of us in this call are in multiracial relationships. I just find that interesting.
I think
because we're woke as fuck.
I'm not. So I think part of it is I'm interested in people. I'm interested in people's stories. I'm interested, like, I love humanity, man. Like, it's fucking awesome. So for me, I've always sought partners who are different from me, because that expansion of my mind, that being wowed by somebody else's past and story, that shit just jazzes me up. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah,
and I think that's part of atheism, like just being, I think atheists more than anyone are in awe of the world as it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's how crazy it is.
Needed to be anything more than what it is. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was just going to say, think how crazy it is that whenever we think of interracial marriage itself, and this is basic Foucault postmodernist kind of thinking about our culture and racism and binary thinking, whenever we talk about it, we're all doing this right now, and we're all woke as fuck, but we're still participating in this, where we say you're in an interracial marriage means that you're white fucking somebody that isn't. Why do we even think that way? It's kind of silly. And no point. And this isn't a critique on Matthew. Like, he was making a very positive statement. I'm not shitting on you, Matt. But I'm just saying, like, it's weird that this is the way that we think, and that essentially our culture is based on some form of social white supremacy, and people try to reject privilege based on your skin color. It's so ridiculous to those of us that catch it, and those of us that don't catch it, they feel offended, and they're like, "Why are you attacking me? I don't hate black people. I don't hate Mexicans. I just, I think they put a little too much spice on their food." But it's like, no, dude, you don't get what's going. Yeah.
Yes, it's like the don't you get it? The not thinking about us at all is the problem. Like, because we think about you literally all the time.
Every day.
To the point that we have created an entire culture built around your comfort.
I think about you too, Nikki.
Our hair and the way we talk and the way we look, everything has been built.
If they go to work without their fucking white people hair, they get in trouble.
Exactly. Like,
yeah.
What's going on with your hair? What's going on there?
Have you seen the documentary by Chris Rock, Good Hair?
Yeah, Good Hair.
That's a fantastic documentary. My God, it opened my eyes. Like, holy crap, I had no idea. You need to see that.
It's a whole industry built around comforting the white supremacist structure.
Hey, we're here. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. God damn it! So you be like us, so we don't. It's getting real uncomfortable. You being different.
Yes, exactly. The difference is the discomfort.
Get right or get out. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's where I disagree a little bit. Is I don't think that they're necessarily bad people. I think the culture's the problem.
Tribalism.
I think tribalism, institutional racism, that's the problem. These are concepts that are the enemy, not the people that are the enemy. We're all brothers and sisters. that are going through this, and the moment that you push back on that, which I totally agree. Why you're like, motherfucker, have you seen Donald Trump? I agree, but the moment you push back a little bit and you think, okay, that doesn't sound right because there are some assholes out there. Mike Pence is literally trying to electrocute gay people. Donald Trump is literally wanting to put particular people in cages that didn't have the right nationality.
They're trying to make official discrimination on a national level.
But I'm talking about not necessarily the representations, living in a representative democracy of the people. I'm talking about the people themselves. Were you a bad person before you became an atheist?
But
yes.
Robert,
fucking
listen,
yes.
Listen, that's the thing. That's what I was talking about earlier as far as being anti-racist. You're giving a lot of generosity to people who voted for Donald Trump, who basically
too much,
said being
way too much,
a racist, and just like not a good human. Period. It's just fine because I'd rather that than some woman who's gonna let diversity in. Like that you're giving a lot of generosity to people who are legit bad actors. Like it's not enough to be in the middle. It's not enough to say, you know what, I just don't want to tip the scales there. We need you to be anti-racist. We need you to be anti-homophobic. We need you in the fight. It's not enough.
But what if they don't have the same? What if they don't have the same information you do? Before you became atheist, weren't you limited on information? Wasn't it reasoning that made you atheist? So before you had that reasoning, how could you be held accountable for being a believer? It's not fair.
It shouldn't be. Okay, not believing in something as fundamental as religion. Let's put that aside.
I feel like I'm pissing everybody off tonight.
No. It's a great conversation.
Robert's an asshole.
Excellent.
I love it.
I'm just saying, and I'm not even saying Republicans are stupid or Christians or Muslims or Jews are stupid. I'm just saying we each have our different scenario that we're in, and it's our job as podcasters, as people putting speech out there, which is why I was like, hey, let's not fight speech. This is what we do for a fucking living. But I'm just saying, if this is our job to present information, to try to change minds. Otherwise, if it's just good and bad people, what are we doing? Why are we evangelizing anti-God concepts? Why are we evangelizing anti-conservative concepts? Why are we evangelizing anti-hate and racism concepts? We're trying to change minds because something inside of us, something special, something valuable, something that existed in that moment that Nancy decided when she was deciding the votes on that island about North and South hunting. There's something inside of us that believes in people. And if we can contribute to that with our voice, with our speech, we can make a difference. And I'm saying, why would we push back against that? That's what we're here for, guys. Let's not judge each other. Let's try to bring them into the fold. And the people that are fighting against us, yes, let's push the fight, right? Let's do that. The civil rights movement didn't happen because they went, oh, well, I guess, that white asshole cop that's sicking his dog on me in a fire hose is probably a nice guy. No, they went forward with it. I'm not anti-protest, and I'm not anti-free speech when it comes to, what we're trying to do. But I'm just saying, I don't think that hating the other side is the best way to go. It's Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
It's a response to them having a leg up, and it's causing us to start questioning the values that we hold to as atheist, liberal, humanists. And I'm telling you, hang the fuck on, because we win in the end.
I think that I agree with everything you just said, but there's kind of a point here that I want to bring up, is that I'm not trying to evangelize to the Christians or to the religious. I don't do that. I'm trying to talk to other atheists and that kind of stuff, because my show is not for non-believers. Because I'd say fuck your God, God damn it, at the start of every goddamn episode since episode 15.
You both do.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So it's like, I don't try to evangelize to other people. I don't even like to use that term, evangelize, because I tried to do that shit before. I don't like to use that term. But I do try to have people think about what they're thinking about and what they're saying within their own selves. And if they decide that what I'm saying is okay, and to maybe think about that a little bit more, that's all I'm trying to do. I do not try to evangelize. I hate that word. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Matthew, here's the question. Do you think it makes any difference one way or the other whether or not they're atheists, but that they're humanists, that the arguments that you might have, and this goes back to what Robert was saying too, that you want to bring people into the fold. Personally, I don't think that whether someone is an atheist or not makes a difference. I think whether they're a humanist, it's whether or not they're a humanist, or whether or not they have humanist progressive tendencies.
Yeah, whether or not they're humanist or is irrelevant to me, but whether or not they actually care for other people in the same way that they want to care for themselves. Yeah. You know, I'm more of a golden rule kind of a person than I am anything else. Yes. You know, I want to treat you as a person and be nice to you in hopes that you will be nice to me back. I just want to have good conversations. Yeah, whether or not we agree is irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm 100% there. My thinking is that whether or not you're an atheist, which has nothing to do with being good, being evil, being, an asshole or whatever, but if you're a humanist, that's where the change and that's where the conversations tend to be the most productive.
I don't
Just
disagree.
My opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also got to remember that no matter who the person is, nobody's the villain in their own story.
No, absolutely not. So, you're always your own hero.
Yeah, exactly. So even Hitler thought he was doing the right thing in many ways. So
he did. Absolutely, he thought he was doing the right thing.
Anyway, I think we're gonna leave it there. It's a shame we couldn't finish our conversation in Uganda.
How about this? What if we remember Winston Churchill was quoted as saying, incorrectly, it wasn't him, but still, it's good enough. The best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. And that probably applies to free speech a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And he also said it's the worst system, but it's the best one we have.
Yeah. What the average voter would be if we properly funded schools and properly nourished them and made sure they had housing and made sure they had health insurance. Like, oh my God, what would a 5-minute conversation with a voter be if we actually believed in people?
As a Canadian, I'm super rooting for Americans right now that you guys are actually going to get your shit together.
Okay. For us too, God help us.
I'm trying.
Don't hold your breath.
I'm not.
We're going to try.
A computer and a microphone. That's all we got to work with.
Do you guys want to try the no Trumps?
Sure, let's try no Trump.
Let's do this.
Okay. So
explain the game
I got this game that I bought at a kiosk. Actually, I think it was right when they're selling calendars. So like November last year. There are 2 quotes. One will be Trump. The other one will somebody else. And I want you to try to guess which one is Trump.
I'm so excited.
I'm going to give you my best Trump impersonation.
I'm going to pull out my Trump brush just for this.
Oh, yeah. Shake it around like it looks like it's
Okay. I haven't done this in a bit. Hang on a second. I got to take a swig of my beer. I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. That's number 1.
This got to be Trump.
Hang on. Number 2.
Okay.
I actually don't like thinking. I think a lot of people like to think a lot. I don't like to think.
That's also Trump. They're both Trump.
They both sound like him. That's the problem.
The first one is definitely
Robert's head's at.
I'm gonna go with the first one.
Yeah, so am I.
Because that's off the tape.
The grab him by the pussy.
Grab him by the pussy. Yes, the first one was Trump. The second one, Kanye West.
Was that in his manic phase?
Is he like the Black Trump now? That guy?
No,
didn't he say slavery is the choice?
He's bipolar.
Yes, I was told from the beginning that the other quotes would be from other people.
Yeah.
One more card. You guys want to do one more?
Yeah, by all means.
Was this chicken or fish? Number two. My fingers are long and beautiful.
Oh, it's that second one's so Trump.
That's got to be Trump.
The second one's Trump. It's about his fingers.
It's about his little short hands that he
Exactly.
likes to.
The second one's totally Trump.
Okay, look.
Do the full Trump impression. Come on. I know you got it in you, man. You got it in you.
Okay, so...
You go.
So the first one was Jessica Simpson.
Yeah.
That was when she was trying to figure out if chicken of the sea was tuna or fish.
Oh my
God.
I wish I was joking. And the second one was Trump.
I'm a billionaire now.
Trump really said my fingers are long
Well,
and beautiful?
you know, because everyone was saying
I mean,
how
it's
they
not like
were
I'm
so
shocked.
short.
I'm just saying, like, I don't remember that.
Because people kept saying about how short hand, short dick.
Yeah.
Long and beautiful.
Yep.
So is that it, or do you want one more?
Oh, I do one more. This is
Oh
fun.
my God! Please don't stop.
The beauty of me is that I'm very rich. That was number one.
Okay. Second.
The voice is just it's like Trump, but like he's got like bronchitis.
Penguin. You sound like the penguin.
It's like Trump with emphysema. Like Trump's been smoking his.
The beauty of me is I'm very rich.
You know, I did smoke for 25 years. I only quit like 10 years ago, so maybe.
Nice gruff.
Thanks. It is necessary for me to establish a winner image. Therefore, I have to beat somebody.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Two.
That's a
What was the first one?
Number two is Trump. Number two is Trump.
I think number one's Trump.
Oh,
Can you say the first one again, if that's okay?
The beauty of me is that I'm very rich.
I don't know. They both sound like Trump.
The second one
hardest game I've ever
the second one is too long of a sentence for Trump.
We need to analyze the words in the sentence because he can't say anything that with more than 4 letters.
You can't say anything
If
that's
it's
more than
grammatically
3 syllables.
correct.
Trump doesn't say anything that's 3 syllables. By the way, did you see that there was something that came out that they said that somebody released his IQ, like his
Really?
and they said his IQ was 73.
I don't know if that's true.
What?
But,
I believe it.
but I did hear him say oranges over.
I
and
have the
over.
best words, and the longest sentence in that sentence is word. 5 letters.
I don't know.
5 letters.
I don't know if you guys caught a couple of weeks ago. We said on the show that they discovered a moth that has like a little golden scales on top of its head, and it has a small penis, and they named it after Donald Trump. It's like Neil Papa Donald Trumpi. It was actually discovered by a Canadian too.
It's a Kevin joke.
No, it's actually true. It's actually true. I thought it was a joke too. I googled it. It's actually there.
100% true. That's fucking funny.
That's true.
But in answer to the question, the burning question
Drum
everyone
roll.
wants to know.
Yes.
Drum
The
roll.
beauty of me is that I'm very rich. Donald Trump.
Yeah. You gotta love how the Canadians get it.
I wanted to say that one.
That's impressive.
It is necessary. It is necessary for me to establish a winner
Those
image.
words are way too big
Therefore,
for
I have
Trump.
to beat somebody. Richard Nixon.
Oh, yeah.
Far.
The necessity? Trump doesn't know the word necessity.
There we go.
That was a good call. I always put too much faith in him.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for being on the show today and for the wonderful discussion. I hope we get to do this on a regular basis. This was a lot of fun.
We should all just do that game.
Yeah, we should all do that game too. An entire episode of just doing that game.
Let's create brackets.
We'll do a Canadian versus American.
The brackets would be amazing. That would be great.
Take a couple of seconds, each one of you, and plug your show in. Brent, Nikki, let's start with you guys.
something missing
Okay,
in your brain.
we are Unapologetix, spelled with an X, yes. And we,
on Facebook, same thing, Unapologetix. We're on Twitter at Brentley Allen, Allen's ALLAN.
One.
Don't
forget that, okay.
Unapologetix.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, we're on everything.
Thank you for being on discussion on Uganda. Matthew, where can they find you?
I'm Matthew. I am the co-host of the Odd Atheist Friends. We can be found at OAF or on Facebook, OAF Podcast on Twitter, and we also live stream Sundays usually to YouTube when we do our records.
Fantastic. And Robert, where can they find you?
TheRightToReason.com.
Fantastic.
And you can all find my new show.
Don't, ego there, watch it go. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that, and we'll talk to you very soon.
That horse isn't real, but Jesus is. Or Zeus, Thor, Mithra, Vishnu, you don't believe in them. I think the reason is apparent. You do what you're told and believe in the God assigned by your parents. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. Atheist. I'm an atheist. Atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. Now let me take a sec. Don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed.